Hello, and welcome to Doctor Who 50 Years Ago, the show that looks back to the episode that aired in 1967 and looks at the difference between then and now. This week, the climax, thrilling or otherwise, to Jeffrey Orm's The Underwater Menace, Episode 4. I am Ben.
I'm Luke.
And I am Nick.
And here we are, and here we go into the news from 1967. On Sunday, the 29th of January, the Red Guards paraded former President Liu Shaoqi, I hope that's the right pronunciation, through the streets of Baoting in a humiliating display watched by 1 million people, forcing him to ride in the back of a truck, dressed in the gown and hat of a Qing Dynasty official. The Cultural Revolution is laying waste to the old order just because Mao says so.
Yeah, and it would be pretty humiliating to be dressed as the fallen final dynasty of Imperial China, the Qing. So,
yes,
that's the significance of it being dressed as an old imperial.
Could argue that as part of the Cultural Revolution, they're reshaping history to the communist ends.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's exactly what
this was a decadent imperialist regime that was bound to fall.
Yeah, that's exactly what they were doing in the Cultural Revolution.
Whether Chiang Kai-shek liked it or not.
Yeah.
On Tuesday, the 31st of January, the United Nations opened the protocol relating to the status of refugees, defining them as a person who, owing to a well-founded fear of being persecuted for reasons of race, religion, nationality, membership, or a particular social group or political opinion, is outside the country of his nationality, and so on and so on and so on. It's quite a thing to have happened 50 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, refugees are quite a big deal at the moment, aren't they?
They are, yes. And they are a big deal in this episode.
Yes.
As it comes to it. If they survive. Spoilers.
I would say the idealism of people, the way they treat refugees 50 years ago, has kind of melted away into a cynicism and distrust of refugees in the current climate.
Well, here's something interesting. Back then, would it have been people from Islamic nations who would have been refugees? Or would it have been people from, like, white areas in the communist area that would have been mostly affected by this?
In Western Europe and the US, yeah, they would be mostly receiving communist refugees.
Yeah, somehow transcending the Berlin Wall and the various border points.
Be mostly communist refugees. I suppose you probably would have gotten some African refugees as well.
As the developing nations fall into the pockets of various authoritarian regimes.
Yeah. But less so the Middle East. At this 50 years ago, the Middle East was a fair bit more stable than it is now.
Yeah, it goes slightly nuts with Yom Kippur and then transcends into the insane in 79. Speaking of the Cold War, on Friday the 3rd of February, East Germany released 4 Americans who had been imprisoned in the communist nation for more than a year and allowed them to cross into West Berlin after negotiation between the city attorneys of East and West Berlin and cooperation from US State Department officials. It's interesting that this one's been highlighted in particular. I don't know why. I don't know if there's any significance to the prisoners other than they're American.
Well, I mean, I suppose it must have been a relatively rare thing for Americans to have been detained in the Eastern Bloc, just because of the diplomatic troubles that would cause.
Yes.
Well, I guess it's a sign of what's to come in the Cold War. We're on the verge of détente at this point. We're not quite there yet, but a couple more years and détente will be underway.
And if anything, it further sidelines the whole point of Zaroff, which is fanatics trying to destroy the world because East blames West and West blames East. And progress has happened, as we can see.
Yeah, pragmatism is ruling as opposed to extremism.
And finally, on Saturday the 4th of February, preparing for the possibility of a war between the Soviet Union and China, the Soviet Communist Party Politburo adopts a resolution to station troops in Mongolia and to increase military presence in the socialist republics bordering China. It's getting hot, folks. It's probably going to end in conflict sometime in the next 5 months.
Yes. Yeah, this is further from what happened last week, with build-up of tensions between the Soviet Union and China. And as you said, Ben, this is going to lead to a border war at some point.
Yeah, I kind of guessed as much. Yeah, so there's ideology breakdown and factions.
Yeah, no longer is Chinese communism and Maoism is now distinct and separate from the Marxist-Leninist communism of the Soviet Union.
And that was the news. Yes, you're very welcome. And now we shall get into episode 4 of The Underwater Menace. It's slightly a bit of a clunker. It's like episode 2 in that regards. 1 and 3 are quite good. This one is quite padded.
This is the sort of episode where at some moments I'm screaming, I'm loving this! And then the other moments I'm completely distracted and don't care. So I've pretty much forgotten large swathes of this. So the bits I can remember are all really good.
It's like this episode is the action episode, quotation marks there, but it's the most padded action you can imagine, and they really do drag out the whole escape. The 5 minutes in, the Doctor gives his plan of what he's going to do. Right, this is what's going to happen in the rest of the episode, and then it takes 20 minutes to do that. So yeah, all the bits with Zaroff are brilliant.
It doesn't even take 20 minutes, it takes 5, and then 10 minutes is spent running away from said problem.
Oh, yeah.
This is the shortest episode at 23 minutes 20, as opposed to the others, which were all 24 plus.
So the episode starts off with Zaroff tending to Faust once again, but less effectively. Remarkably, through a jump cut, the Doctor and Ben deal with Faust, who isn't dead, probably because the gun never actually fired a bullet. Sean, Jacko, Ara and Polly reunite with the Doctor and Faust. Jamie went off to Zaroff's laboratory, so he's not needed for this scene. And the Doctor blurts out his plan. Flood Atlantis and Zaroff's nuclear reactor. It's bound to end well. And the other minor characters, Jacko and Sean, get to evacuate the citizens whilst the Doctor does the destruction thing.
This was just so confusing to me in the most minor of ways.
Mm-hmm.
Because of the music. There was this really spooky, like, ambient music going on that felt like it was taken from another part of the story, but there isn't really music in this thing.
It is literally painting a doomsday scenario.
That's something.
Yeah, that's what I've heard many a time, and let's face it, this was Dudley's second Doctor Who gig ever. The first one was Planet of Giants yonks ago in late '64. So give the man effort for trialling and error.
This one in particular is very much aimed at children. There is nothing here for the adults. This isn't serious in any way, shape or form.
Yeah, that is the direction they took it in.
So this is a very childlike thing to have in there, but it makes sense if this is meant to be for children.
I mean, it's got its own mad scientist. In the laboratory, said mad nuclear professor scientist guy, Zaroff, is being mad. There are several nothing can go wrong lines. The strikes, remember them from last episode, are causing trouble. Workers are deserting thanks to the food strike, stopping progress. And Zaroff utters many blasts in his wonderful accent.
Well, the bit which intrigued me about this, in the midst of this current day fake news sort of thing that's plaguing the world, is the man on the screen says, Rumor has it we're facing starvation. There's panic. And Zarof's idea is to... I put down the word enforcement troop because I didn't want to say the word secret police, but then I just wrote down secret police a bit later. To sort it out. And that sort of reminds me of that dictator communist way of doing things. That the people don't like what we're doing, well, we'll beat some sense into them, and eventually they'll learn to swallow that propaganda.
In the generating station, because that's where the Doctor's going for some reason, he's with Ben, and they get through the guards with the old prisoner and guard routine. The Doctor, looking not normal, somehow gives them the password to enter the generating station and take it over, thanks to some idiotic guards. Sabotage happens, cutting cables over loads of reactor, nuclear or otherwise. It's fairly weird. But yeah, I suppose it actually gives Ben, the character of Ben, something to do, which is nice.
Yeah. Well, this is the detriment of Jamie, who does nothing now this episode. Jamie literally does nothing.
One bit I liked about this was that even though we don't have the footage, we can still see that Ben used a karate chop to knock out one of the guards, which is by far my favourite thing about this era of Doctor Who. The fact that the karate chop is completely lethal.
Jamie and Polly go through some similar-looking corridors to get to Zarof's laboratory, whilst inside, Zaroff deals with the reactor overload by shouting at it. There's a radiation leak from the reactor, which breaks the wall holding back in the entirety of the sea. And there goes Atlantis. The temple is flooded, water pouring out of Amdo in a very powerful image. It uses the imagery of the false god swept away once more for a final stab at religion.
These people, they're all dogma with no rhetoric. And the image of the false god being swept away is symbolic. Is he having fun? Is this an idea that he had and then decided to sort of make this completely stupid plot around it?
I don't think it's like maybe his opinion. The thing is, Jeffrey Orr is quite a prolific writer. I can't imagine he would have peppered all his stuff with anti-religion. I would say it's just
him getting a hold of the genre.
Yeah, I mean, he's not written a lot of sci-fi stuff.
Ben says, "Do you know what you're doing?" And Troughton says, "Of course I don't, but there's no harm in trying." And that is as different to Hartnell as you could possibly get. That is 1,000 miles away. He would have said, "Oh, am I doing it?" And
okay,
and then would have walked off, trying to maintain his cool. But Troughton is a lot more flustery and
pragmatic.
anarchic.
Yeah, and there's a lot more situations where he hangs on one decision, a 50-50 decision, where either they all live and or they all die. Damon is now on board with the rebels because of his work of turning into people into fish. It has been washed away. So Faust and the others get the hell out of Dodge. The flood is destroying Atlantis, and it's unknown if the people are actually getting out alive. At which point we go, this is a freaking massacre! At this point, there's no cuts to, the Atlanteans are alive and well and stuck on a volcano island, or the fish people got out alive. No, we never see them again. As far as I'm concerned, they're all dead.
They are pretty much all dead, and it's not like they could survive post-Atlantis. The episode doesn't care for the ethics. It is so not concerned with any of these things that it's just, they all die. It's goofy and stupid. It's not trying to be fascinating in any way. It's just, don't even think about it.
Meanwhile, unaware, Zaroff continues planning for the big explosion. The Doctor comes in, talks the technicians out of working for Zaroff by telling him his mad plan, breaks the news of the city about to kill them all, and everybody runs except for Zaroff. He lowers a small fence between himself and the Doctor so he can set off the explosion in safety once the reactor goes critical.
Like Power, we have the leader of the mutiny going down with his ship as his guards die, staying behind because he's too obstinate.
Amy and Polly scramble for safety, whilst the Doctor and Ben ruse Zaroff by turning out the lights, luring him to open the gate and turn on the lights. Ben runs in, closes the gate and escapes before it shuts, leaving Zaroff unable to explode the world. The Doctor and Ben run off and are unable to save Zaroff, even though the Doctor has moral and ethical doubts. But eventually they leave him to drown 6 inches away from completing his explosive experiment. And thinking everybody else is drowned as well. Oh, that's the Doctor and Ben thinking that Jamie and Polly haven't survived. Of course. There's this awkward scene where Jamie just ignores Polly's defeatist talk, which sounds really weak and feeble and doesn't portray the character in any good light at all. And he gets her out safely from the caves. It's like it's the only thing he does good in this episode.
Oh yes, saying these tunnels all look the same.
Oh god, yeah, that as well. But yeah, the Doctor and Ben escape their own way. The reactor dies with Zaroff. Damon resolutely changes Atlantis' religious customs on his own, with a weak Faust's blessing. No more religion! Okay. And so they hope to create new Atlantis. No more gods, no more fish people. Good luck with that, suckers!
This is just shoehorning in a happy, quotation marks there, ending for the other minor characters.
Yes, let's start over again.
Yeah, basically, it is a trope in a lot of 60s Doctor Who where at the end, they go back to Power of the Daleks, actually. There's probably the worst part about Power of the Daleks is the really rushed ending, and at the end everyone's just like, right, well, loads of people died, but we're going to just have a happy ending now, so let's all work together.
Let's get back to normal.
Also, he has an about-face turn and is like, yeah, I was very happy to be operating on people and make them into fish people, but now I'm going to stop doing that and be a good person because...
That's how the Tarble all began. The TARDIS crew reunite at the surface, naturally enough. Sean and Jacko watch them leave. Good luck with them, because they're stuck now on the volcano island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, so they're dead too. Then the old continuity between stories happens in the TARDIS, and we haven't seen this since, like, the Power of the Daleks. Jamie is now suddenly completely happy travelling, whilst the Doctor takes offence that when he's told he can't pilot the TARDIS. So he tries to get them to Mars, and everything goes wrong. The end.
I was thinking about Doctor Who and the Daleks, the 65 film.
Yes.
Where, oh, aren't we all really cheerful and happy-go-lucky? Oh no, Ian, don't stand on that lever.
Thus ends the Underwater Menace and its entirety of madness.
Yes. So what do we think on the serial as a whole?
I like it. I mean, it's got its down points with episodes 2 and 4, I guess, but it is lovable. You've got to love it. Ironically, at the least, because it's.
I think from our perspective now, 50 years later, it's got a sort of charm to it, B-movie charm to it that makes it very adorable and funny, that if something were as terrible as this made now, we'd hate it. So I suspect at the time it was hated, not hated, but not well received. But now it looks so old-fashioned, it's cute, it's funny. And as the lovely Rob Sheeran has said, it talks about it in the documentary, isn't it lovely that Doctor Who was willing to take the sorts of risks that this script entailed so soon after the Doctor regenerated for the first time.
This is the season of risks, and they all paid off. Thank goodness.
So, shall we do our ratings for 2017 and 1967?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. The people would have given it a 6. I'm giving it a 7.
Wow.
I'm probably going to go for me, 2017, I'm going to say 6.5.
Uh-huh.
But I think in 1967, it would have, except from the very smallest kids. So if you're under 5 or something, this wouldn't apply. But,
Yes.
I'd say over 5, probably a 3 or a 4. I don't think it would have been that well received at all.
Okay.
Too silly. It'd be too silly for most people.
My view is exactly the same as Nick's.
Obviously.
I was going to use the words can't quite stretch to a 7 even though I want to. So I'm just going to cheat and say 6.5 as well. And
then I'm hopelessly optimistic. Cool.
Yeah, you think that we're pushing you to give it an 8, but
No.
we hate this more than you apparently.
No,
Yeah.
7. Yeah.
We're going to gut it.
Let's gut the underwater menace.
Yes.
Perfect. Let's fillet it, pulp it, and turn it into a nice, crispy bit of cod or something. Right. What I've got. So,
Let's batter it.
batter it.
Oh, God.
Assault and batter it. Fish puns! Yes! Oh, I need to go to bed. Right. So yeah, this story was chosen over William M's The Imps, a storyline which concerned a alien passenger liner heading to Earth with a hostile form of plant life, which was an idea eventually reworked into my favourite, the Faceless Ones. But Ems became ill and couldn't rewrite it in time, so Orm's script, which had been initially rejected in favour of Ems, got in, with rapid rewrites in a few weeks before filming. And Jamie got all the lines from Ben, as you'd expect, because he was a sudden addition.
I can elaborate on this with a direct quote from the Second Doctor Handbook. The script was hastily delivered by Orm in a flurry of correspondence between the 16th and 19th of November. So it was written in about 2 weeks.
There were continued discussions throughout the creation of the serial on how Troughton should play the Doctor, as initial reactions to Power of the Daleks were not favourable. Sidney Newman was concerned that the Doctor was too much of an anti-hero and too human. And the latter is a complaint that we sometimes make of the 10th Doctor.
Could we have had the Second Doctor always as he was in Power? That's a shame.
Troughton was disappointed in particular with the cheap sets and costumes enforced by the low budget, and it's not a secret to say that Julia Smith and Patrick Troughton didn't work well together, and Julia Smith sometimes could succumb to the pressure and burst into tears, which is wonderful. That's something you want. Yeah, that's something you want for the director. Ultimately, the Doomsday Scenario serial with extra water than usual received high audience figures, 8 million, 7 million-ish, although the reaction index of the viewers was poor. We're talking like low 40s on the reaction scale.
I would say probably the reason it's got such high ratings is because we're in the middle of winter and so the kids come back from school and they haven't got much else to do, so
yeah,
and watch Doctor Who.
Member of the public, Mrs. N. Safford, wrote to the production office with concerns about the content of the show, in particular, a sequence at the end showing Polly being prepared for an operation to turn her into a fish person.
Yes. She was from the National Society for the Welfare of Children in Hospitals.
Oh, God.
I know, yeah. Essentially, that was the time where the children were getting their injections, and so obviously they were concerned that children might assumed that against bacteria, so they assumed they might be turned into a fish person. And BBC executives dismissed this, saying, "No, they're not going to put 2 and 2 together, dear."
But it's just the whole episode is so childish and silly, except for that bit, which is it's a bit weird.
Yes. Troughton's performance was described by a journalist from the Morning Star, who were very good at reviewing Doctor Who serials at this time, as clownish.
Troughton has become a lot more popular in retrospect. I think at the time it would have been very hard to swallow this change from the very serious, very dignified, authoritarian figure that the first Doctor, played by William Hartnell, was like, compared to this anti-establishment, kind of almost buffoonish, like clownish facade that Troughton put on. I think Troughton probably would have been more popular with the children than Hartnell was. He certainly is more of a, I don't know, child-friendly figure. I can imagine myself preferring Troughton to Hartnell as a child.
And dare we say it, more entertaining, both for children and adults alike. Australia, New Zealand, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Zambia bought the episodes. Episode 3 remained in the archives solely as a way to show to people what season 4 was like. Of all the episodes, it had to be that one. Whilst episode 2 was returned in 2011 by UK Film Collector. Well done him. And that's The Underwater Menace.
This is so good because it's so silly and stupid that...
Yeah, well, it really depends on what you like. Do you like comedy in Doctor Who? If yes, you will find this funny, although it is unintentionally funny, but still. But if you really like your Doctor Who to be serious, I can see why you'd hate this.
It's good that it's a one-off, if anything. That they didn't go down this road forever and a day, because I don't think the show would have survived. No. And those were the decisions that were being made 50 years ago. Thank you very much for watching. You can find us on Blogspot, which redirects to iTunes. We're also on Facebook and YouTube, where you can comment and rate us. Like, comment, and subscribe, especially on YouTube. And leave a good review on iTunes, because that's fun. Also, Google+, if you dare. We shall be back next week to go to space, more specifically the moon base. Episode 1 of that will be up in your screens next week. Until then, I have been Ben.
I have been Luke.
And I have been Nick.
Thank you, and goodbye.